Christopher Berndt. He'll be delivering his talk on the topic of navigating your research career while working with people. First of all, I extend my namaste to Dr. Christopher. Dr. Christopher?
Hello.
Yeah, so I'm extending namaste in Indian style with folded hands.
Okay, so the floor is mine, correct? I shall talk.
So let me tell you the audience about your profile first, then you can start, yeah. So Dr. Christopher is a distinguished professor who joined Swinburne University of Technology, Australia in early 2008 as the founding professor of Surface Science and Interface Engineering. Followed by this, Surface and Interface Engineering at James Cook University, a tenured professor position at Stony Brook University, where he remains adjunct professor, and appointments at NASA Lewis Research Center in Cleveland as a fellow of Institute for Aerospace Propulsion and Power, where he worked on thermal barrier coatings. Professor Berndt professional responsibilities gravitate around the Thermal Spray Society of ASM. Dr. Chris has been a member of ASM International since 1991. He was appointed as a vice president to ASM International in 2000 and then as a president in 2002. So today we have a great personality among us. He was the preceding editor for the thermal spray conferences held in USA from 1992 to 2003. Professor Berndt is a founding editor and now editor emeritus for the Journal of Thermal Spray Technology. He is a member of some 13 professional societies in the materials, mechanical, manufacturing, and biomedical fields, and has more than 550 publications in the field of material science and engineering. He is also a fellow of Australian Institution of Engineers, a fellow of ASM International, as I have already told you, a fellow of Institution of Metallurgists in UK, and that of ASME, ACS, and lot many more. He is also a Chartered Engineer UK, a Professional Engineer Australia, and a member of College of Bioengineers Australia. His areas of research include engineering, coating technology, biomaterials such as orthopedic devices, failure of materials, thermal spray, and nanotechnology. So without taking much time, I'd request Dr. Christopher to kindly start his lecture. Dr. Christopher.
Okay, thank you very much for that very kind introduction.
Hello, Dr. Chris, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you to see you here in this platform. I'm Dr. Butta Singh.
Thank you. How are you, Dr. Butta Singh?
Good morning, Professor. Good morning, Professor Harpreet here.
Very, very good to hear these very friendly voices from afar.
Thank you, sir. Nice to know.
Yeah. So, shall I continue with my talk, gentlemen?
Yes, please, sir.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. It is wonderful what technology can do, especially in these days when it's very tough to travel. I extend all of my best wishes. Hopefully your families are safe. Hopefully your students are safe. That is most important during these days. What I'm going to talk about today is really focused towards the younger people of our community. Although I think that is also important for older colleagues and even professors to listen. First of all, let me acknowledge the support of various institutions. I am an adjunct professor of IIT Ropar. I have a strong association with IIT Madras, as well as Jinan University in China, and my former university at Stony Brook, and of course, I am paid by Swinburne University. I'd like to acknowledge the help of many people, and some of these students are now colleagues and former colleagues are referenced on this very first slide. So, Mr. Chairman, there are various people that I should acknowledge also who have been funding this type of research. I'm the Director of SEED, Surface Engineering for Advanced Materials, and that is sponsored by the equivalent of our National Federal Council, Australian Research Council. Alternative titles for this talk could have been my professional development as a researcher, and also I'm going to describe many of the bumps which one receives and which one must surmount during their life. So I'm acknowledging the funding organisation, funding industry, and in Australia, it is traditional that we acknowledge our traditional owners of the land, the Aboriginal owners of this land on which we are graced to live in Australia. So a lot of my talk is focused towards industrial applications. So whatever I say over the next 40 or so slides will be addressing industrial applications in a roundabout way. So here are the broad instructional aims. So Mr. Chairman, when this number down in the bottom right-hand corner gets up to about 40, that means that I'll be nearing the end of this talk. Although I've been given a rather large slot of time, I'm not sure how much of that time I will actually take. You know, I may be 40 minutes, I may be 50 minutes. So what I'm going to do is paint a big picture of professional life. I'm going to reference various case histories, and I've learned a lot, I've made a lot of mistakes. So I'm going to talk about what I might have learned more quickly if I knew then what I know now. So we all become a little bit smarter as we learn from mistakes, and I can confess that I've made a lot of mistakes, and I hope that by passing on these mistakes that the people who are listening to this talk do not make the same mistakes. And I'm going to give you some pointers on what you might like to think about. So first of all, it's important to tell you just a little bit about myself. So here I am in wonderful Melbourne. The temperature is 14 degrees centigrade. Winter has just started. I've been to India, as you know, many times. Tokyo is 10 hours away. Los Angeles is 16 hours away. So Melbourne is a large city, 4 million people. Australia, 26 million people. So by Indian standards, it's a very large country, 3 times the size of India, but we only have, 26 billion people compared to 1.4 billion. I've spent a large part of my life in the USA, 16 years in the USA. I've got some large collaborations, not only in India, as you see soon, but over in Europe and in Singapore. My undergraduate degree was in South Australia. My postgraduate degree at Monash, which is in Melbourne. And now here I am at Swinburne University. I've visited many places in India. This map is poorly populated. There are many other spots. There should be a spot down here in Trivandrum, where I've been to twice. There should be many more spots up here in the wonderful Punjab and around this area as well. So I've had some very pleasant excursions throughout India. So one trip that I had a few years back went from the north to the south, to the Pakistan border, to Delhi. So I've got many fond memories of India, especially in the Punjab, and I hope that I can start visiting India again in the early new year. So what is the motivation for this course? Applications. So fundamentally, I'll be talking about how to deal with people, but I'll also be talking about applications, because as engineers and scientists, we must interact with engineers, scientists, accountants, politicians, school teachers, many, 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 mothers and fathers. We have to interact with many, many people with whom we teach and with whom we have contracts. So in the glass, power generation, pulp and paper, agricultural, plastic rubber, transportation, and many, many other areas. There should be one here called bioengineering or biomedical engineering. So, colleagues, how am I coming across? Are you hearing me?
Yes, sir. Absolutely fine.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And if there are issues or if there are immediate questions, please interrupt me and I'll try to address those questions.
Sure, sir.
So for some reason this visual doesn't come up. I can blame the software. But what we're doing here is these are some of the important applications. So someone forgot to mute their phone, or are they asking a question? Okay, so I'll assume that someone is not muting their phone as they should. So some of the applications, spraying dental, orthopedic, dental prostheses that would go into the tooth. This visual should show that of a hip. You can also see hip implants down here. So the material that I'm going to be talking about has large implications. So here is the main challenge as an engineer and scientist that we are all involved in. We're being trained to solve complex problems. And this is just but one example. This is one example in my area of technology. But there are similar examples, similar analogies for all science and engineering and administration and planning and project management. So the point that I'm trying to get across here is that we have a host of large factors which are involved in determining how a material can be processed. This is a very complex problem. It is very difficult to solve this complex problem. But what we do is we break this problem down into different little parts, just as you can see here, feedstock, spray variables, the process, substrate condition at the bottom, particle variables. We break it up into these little different problems. We solve each of the problems separately. We recombine the puzzle to understand the big picture. And I'm going to go through exactly the same process via lessons learned and hints with regards to interacting with people. So this is one thing that I'd like you all to think about, especially the younger people. Establish what you like doing. Establish what you like learning about. Establish the sorts of equipment that you like to use. For me, that happened quite a few years ago, and I can still remember the moment in 1977. I can still remember that moment when I saw a thermal spray process and I got excited. My instructor was also excited. I was very excited, and I said to myself, this is something that I'd like to learn a lot more about. So rule number one for everyone is establish what you like. It may not be thermal spray. It could be thermodynamics. It could be phase equilibrium. It could be biomedical engineering. It could be neural networks. It could be many, many things. But rule number one is establish what you like. So for example, in my area, this has led to looking at microscopy. So here we have a scanning electron microscope of a splat. It looks like a disc. And one of my students, Srini Ranagajan, his advisor was Alex King. We carried out a very thorough experiment of looking at how track networks, that you can see in these two images on the bottom left, how track networks can be deciphered from these microstructural features. That information was fed, was imparted to a mechanical engineer, and now that engineer could look at strength properties. So by looking at this problem in intense detail, we're able to analyse how these coatings perform. Another example is from the nanomechanical world. So right in the centre here, we have a very small indent measuring several micrometers across. You can see cracks emanating across this splat. And now we're able to find out basic fundamental scientific information. And this is very exciting because by looking at these very small pictures and by piecing them together, we're able to decipher and understand the big picture. So the point that I'm getting to here is establish what you like. Now what I'm going to do is talking about focus 3. How can you manage your career? So here are some fundamental questions. For those of you who are younger, who are assistant professors maybe, or postgraduates or undergraduates, there are many career options. And I've listed 7. They're all viable, they're all possible. Industry, academia, government labs, being an entrepreneur and being a consultant, going overseas, having internships, postdocs, or having a mixture of these. And throughout their life, many people have that mixture of these. I've been fortunate in being in academia, but I've also worked in government labs. I have consultancies, I have international relationships, all through number 1, industry. So there are many options. None of these are right, none of these are wrong. They're all viable. And for the individual, it is up to you to see which one suits your profile. So here's a rule. Rule number 2. You need to know what you know. And this is what we do as undergraduates and as postgraduates. We learn factual knowledge. We learn how to organise gigabytes, terabytes of information into a mental framework. We try to organise this. This takes time and energy. Sometimes we go backwards because we have to relearn what we have learnt, or we have to reorganise the framework. We carry out a process and monitor our thinking and learning. We do this, we implement this by going to conferences. We implement this by speaking to our students, by speaking to our colleagues, by writing publications, by giving presentations. And then there's a continuous loop. We are always learning. This is called continuous learning. So what I say to people is that I'm always learning from my students. Every day they teach me something new and I teach them how to learn. Rule number 3 is important. You know what you know, that's number 2, but rule number 3 is know what you don't know. That is critical. Do not pretend that you know something when you don't know it. Be prepared to say, I don't think I understand that completely. Please explain to me in a little bit more detail. You're not confessing that you don't know it. What you're saying is that you'd like to learn a little bit more. So this is the non-embarrassing way of saying, please help me learn a little bit more please go into a little bit more detail about what you're trying to explain. And if you have that, and I think this is a positive attitude, if you have that positive attitude, then you know a lot more. The person who says they know everything worries me. Maybe it means that they have not dug deep enough into that certain topic. Here are some tools, and these are mainly for the younger people who may be listening here, the assistant professors and the postgraduates or undergraduates. These tools should be easy. You should have a plan. You should also have a life, a personal life. You need to keep your curriculum vitae or your resume up to date. You need to keep all options open, and you need to keep all doors open. These are important things. And some of these are very difficult, right? Sometimes keeping doors open can be difficult, as I will explain in a little while. So these tools should be easy. The ones which are not so easy are as follows. We all need to understand that we have bosses, and I will have a hint about that in a little while. Sometimes we need to say no, but it's difficult to say that. We need to develop a network, not only within our own countries, but outside our countries. We need to have a reliable mentor, a person who we respect, a person who we feel can give us some lessons. This mentor is not necessarily a friend. In fact, a friend is probably the worst person to have as a mentor, because a friend may not be able to tell you the things that you should listen to, that you should hear. A friend may not tell you the things that you should need to be improved. We need to have reliable referees, because they will help us get the next job. And we have to remember that in the modern world, we often have transitions of several years. Every year, we may transition to a new job or a new title within our organisation. Go from assistant to associate professor to chair to dean to vice chancellor. So there may be these transitions even within the academic scene. So I'm going to talk about some hints. And these may sound a little bit boring, I must admit, but if you listen very carefully, I think that you'll see that these are of value. So here are some general hints. Think about your current qualifications. Professional engineer is important in America. A PhD is important if you wish and you aspire to work within a university environment. But in some environments, a PhD is not essential. In industry, a PhD is not essential, but I still believe it would help you. Remember, no one likes surprises. So in other words, if you feel that you're going to deliver some bad news in the future to a boss or to one of your workers, you need to be able to prepare that person. A third important hint, be cautious with regards to social media and emails. Never in haste, never late at night, never with negativity. So what I do is that if I think that I'm going to break one of these rules, I send the email to myself, just to myself, and then I review it the next morning, and I say to myself, should I now send this onwards? If I'm forming an email to be sent to someone which may appear to be nasty, I do not put in the recipient in the recipient list. I leave that blank, or I send it to myself. Sometimes you accidentally hit the send key. So I will write the text, but I will not put down the sender. People will only remember you from their last interaction. So if you leave with a negative interaction, that is how they remember you. Many of you who are professors will understand the following one. The engineering is easy. It's the communication, the so-called political engineering, that is hard. So here's a second challenge. And there are many difficult situations that we have throughout life. There are many ways of handling difficult people. There are many ways of handling these hard deadlines, but you need to judge priorities, and all of these have some risk. Reputational risk, financial risk, personal risk. So here's my guiding principle. Your reputation can take decades to develop. That reputation can be destroyed in 10 seconds. Just remember this in red. So you need to be able to handle all these things very carefully. Here's a final list before I get towards the hints. Do not be afraid of change. A lot of things are going to change over the next months because of this terrible pandemic. We all need to be prepared to embrace this change. Currently, this is an aside, I'm working with my team at Swinburne because we know there's going to be a lot of changes. There are going to be some opportunities where we can help with regards to the research that we do so that we can change the world for a better future. My own personal situation is I believe that loyalty and integrity are the keystones of all relationships. So we take those with a great deal of commitment. We need to be sensitive to different cultures. I travel around the world a lot. It will not be a lot in the future for obvious reasons, but we all need to be sensitive to different cultures. And even within one country, even within Australia, I need to be sensitive to different cultures. When I go to Queensland, when I go to Western Australia, it is different than when I go to Victoria, different states in Australia. And I know that within India, it is very different. I know that in Europe, in the USA, it is different. And we take management courses. The final one is smart and hard. You can work very hard, but we also need to work very smart. The guiding principle is to be open-minded, but also be confident, not arrogant, but be confident. Now I'm going to go through some areas where you can learn from mistakes in this fourth focus. If I knew then what I know now, then what would I have done differently? So here we have someone trying to read a crystal ball, right? Here's the past. Here I am. I'm wandering around, right? I'm wandering around. Sometimes I've gone backwards. Sometimes I go forwards. Generally, I've gone forwards. This is the truth. Now, let's assume that we're all in this position now. If I knew what was going to happen, then what path would have I chosen, right? So we're all in this position now. Based on history, what decision do we do so that we can be more focused? So what focused path? So by looking at the following hints, we will all be in a better position, I believe, to choose the more appropriate path. So if you were a postgraduate or an undergraduate I'd say the following. Most of life is attending it. I've got 12 of these hints. So attending lectures, turning up should be easy. Attending means taking notes. Attending means checking your class website and email accounts. And the lesson here is that this is exactly what you'll be doing within your professional life. So most of life is making sure that you're awake and attending. It seems obvious, but there are many of my undergraduates and even some postgraduate students who need to be reminded of this often. Marks are important. Marks only though get you so far. In the industrial sense, there are other major outcomes, such as how to give, or in some instances, if it's a poor presentation, how not to give a presentation. So think of all of the lectures and lecturers that we have had over many decades in some cases. Please do not give the presentation in the same style if you feel that that was a poor style. Please give the presentation and learn from those lecturers who give you a good presentation. We all need to understand the fine points of projects within the industrial sense or within the project sense. We all need to work with our peers. Hopefully, you'll discover the areas of science that excite you within lectures and within projects. And you need to be able to pick. Excuse me, I'm just getting some water. You all need to be able to pick the brains of your bosses and seek their advice for improvement. Am I still coming across clear? Can someone tell me whether I'm still coming across clear?
Yes, Professor Chris.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. You are clear.
I shall continue then.
Yeah, you're doing.
You may continue now. You may continue now.
I've just got about another 10 or 15 slides. Email etiquette. This is kind of supposed to be funny. Email has become a means of miscommunication. There are so many times that we get emails where they just don't make sense. Sometimes it is best to just pick up the phone and say hello to someone. And for example, I've surprised some of my Indian colleagues by phoning up India and just saying, hello, how are you? And we talk about things and it is so much easier. But for the younger people who may be listening, the university instructor should not be sent an email as you would to one of your friends, to one of your peers. There are different audiences. The university instructor should be treated as a potential employer. You should be testing your skills in email etiquette on your instructor. Thus, be formal, use a spell checker, and please get to the point. Don't ramble, get to the point. Learn how to write short emails that get to the point. If you have a question, ask the question. Many students email me for various reasons. The tone of some of these emails lacks professionalism. I tend to ignore those emails. So I'll ask the student to rephrase their email. I'll send them this slide and say, please rephrase the email and send it to me, and then I'll do my best to address that response. Hint number 4, pretty simple. please and thanks. But the big picture is courtesy and gratitude, as well as smiling and not frowning. So I practice this quite often. And those of you who interact with me face to face may have noticed that I look at your face very carefully. Not because I think you're pretty, that's a joke, but I look at your face very carefully because I want to get the facial expression, because that is a form of communication. It is always important to demonstrate, point number 2, respect. And I believe that if you show respect to an individual, then they will also be respectful to you. And this is especially important when you go out to industry, because your own standards of civility must not be artificial. They must not be lowered by those of home with you, with those you interact. Sometimes, this is the sub-bullet in item number 3, it is difficult to be courteous to people in some environments, but please do not reciprocate. Remember, finally, that people will remember these adverse behaviours. For the younger people, create a study group. And the aim here is to elevate the quality of the learning environment. Form a study group, meet somewhere in a professional setting, not at a club. I don't think that's very helpful. Have an agenda, have a firm agenda, because in your professional lives, this study group transforms to an engineering team. Here's an important thing that was brought to my attention last week. Listen very carefully. If you are the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room. In other words, you're not really learning much. In some area, you may learn a lot, but you may not learn in all areas. So please think about this last point. You would like to learn from someone in that room, so it is good for some person to be able to contribute to your own knowledge. Here's another important hint. So we're almost halfway through the list here. Just before you complain to someone, bounce this concern off a colleague, because it could be that you just don't understand. Phrase your question in a simple way. So go back to hint number 4. Do not be confrontational. Be prepared to offer a solution. Many people come to me just complaining. That's not helpful. I ask them virtually immediately, what do you think should happen? So almost immediately I confront them and I say, what is your solution? And by going through that discussion, we come up with a solution which is often better than the one that I would have offered. Now here's the situation. Imagine how you would react if the shoe was on the other foot. In other words, if there is a role reversal, then how would you react? This simple process helps you achieve a resolution. Here's a follow-up for hint number 6. Here's a question. Which of the below statements best describes your interactions with people? I treat people as they treat me. So here's an example. If they're rude to me, then I'm rude to them. Or I treat people as I would like them to treat me. Here's an example. If they are rude to me, then I do not treat them rudely. So think about that. Think about this slide number 33 very carefully, because that will help you navigate your interactions with people. Me, option number 2. Some people are extremely rude to me, but I am not rude to them. I will do my best to be level-handed and treat them as I would like to be treated. Enjoy others, enjoy study, become enthused others. And this is not just in study, but in our work, in our academic work, in our industrial interactions, a positive approach. And if you have that positive approach, you will find that other people will be positive as well. This sounds like a cliche, but if you practice this time and time again, you will find that other people will also become enthusiastic, that they will see that they want to work with you because you have a positive approach. McDonald's, the fast food chain. Avoid the McDonald's syndrome. At McDonald's or Kentucky Fried Chicken or wherever, you can have it your way every day. Right? You order up there your hamburger or your vegetarian pizza. You can have it every day. But within a professional environment, that is not possible. Within the academic environment, that is not possible. So sometimes your common sense does not fit the corporate culture. You may never be able to change that. You need to be able to accept that. So somehow you need to be able to work with that. And there are analogies with regards to the university life that we live. The university life is sometimes very hard. Sometimes it is very aggressive. Sometimes it's very rude. The outcomes may not always go your way. It is tough. My advice is do not dwell on it. Do not let negative things, right? We're going back to here. Do not let negative things influence your own behaviour. Don't dwell on it, but get on with the job of learning and understanding. The half-life of an engineer is 4 years. So, especially for undergraduates, especially in the modern world, thus, usually after 4 years, we transform into another role. Assistant professor, associate professor, professor, chair, dean, etc. Or junior engineer, trainee engineer, junior, senior engineer, manager. So these skills that we learn within academia are immediately transferable to other jobs. Join SOMME, obviously, Society of Materials and Mechanical Engineers. Join a professional society. So this goes hand in hand with hint number 5. The benefits are obvious. You get current information, interact with peers and managers, networking, and potentially find your future job. A professional society is like an insurance policy for your future. I am proud to be a member of SOMME, Society of Materials and Mechanical Engineers. I'm proud to be a member of the Indian Institute of Metals. And I'm proud to be a member of Australian societies, English societies, and societies in the USA. But SOMME is doing a great job, and that is why I'm volunteering to give this talk, because that is a major professional society in India. This is the last hint before I start winding up. You are how you talk. In other words, first impressions count. If you come across as being ill-spoken, rude, and full of curse words, then that is how you'll be judged for a long time thereafter. So I try my best, and hopefully I'm being a good example here. Learn and practice good grammar in your spoken English, French, German, Hindi, whatever. Say what you want to say, then keep quiet. Let people finish their discussion without interruptions. Do not mimic the poor behaviour of others. So this is an exercise that I give to my undergraduates and my postgraduates when I give a lecture. I ask them to count the number of ums, ers, basically, you know what I means. I ask them to count those when I give a lecture. And for me, it's very instructive because as much as I try not to say these, they always slip in. These filler phrases mean nothing. What it means is that I'm speaking too fast, because when you slow down, all of these will disappear, because it means that you're thinking about what you're trying to talk about. Because then, and this is the final point, if you reduce these, then you have more clarity of thought and therefore more clarity of expression and communication. We all have bosses. It's obvious. We must learn and listen. Sometimes our bosses upset us, either intentionally or unintentionally. And we get upset. The fact that we get upset means that we care. But now we need to get around that and use the following hints to understand why we get upset. Often, the boss has an extra dimension. It could be that his or her boss has made certain requirements or demands. It could be that the boss has extra information that causes them to say something. So we're getting down towards the tail end here. Just a few more minutes. Right, and I've been going for about 3/4 of an hour, so we're going pretty good here. So we all have fun, right? So as I said at the start, I look at splats. Here's a splat, looking just like Australia. Right, we all have fun. Cartoon characters, right? Splats, some of these features can be described as these features that we call splats. The final few slides, please. And then I'll leave it to the chair to open up discussion or lead the rest of this session. Here are my last few slides. The future is changing. Since February of this year, the future has changed around the world. We must adapt. If we don't adapt, it's going to be very risky. We all need to rewire ourselves, and occasionally we need to completely reanalyze what we're doing and change direction. I assure you, the only thing that I can guarantee is that the future will change in the very near future. So here are some lessons. Have a plan. Don't make it up as you go along. Have a plan. Have a mentor. Have a life coach. Reach out to someone. Be prepared to take some criticism. Here's an important one. Don't measure yourself against those with whom you work. Measure yourself against the people who inspire you. And I've got many people around the world. In India, there are many people who I really, really congratulate on their success. And they inspire me to be a better researcher, a better person. In the USA, there are many vastly credentialed professors who inspire me. Aim high. We all have decent salaries, but this should not interfere with with our ability to share it with our families and enjoy it. So, it is always important to acknowledge, I said this on slide number 3, I believe, it is always important to acknowledge people. So I acknowledge all those people with whom I've worked, I acknowledge the funding agencies. So this is my very last slide. I have passed these slides to Professor Harpert, just in case there were any hiccups with the technology. I welcome these slides to be shared among SOMME members, and I leave it to the discretion of the SOMME leadership to figure out how these slides can be distributed to India or to the world. So I've been talking approximately for 50 minutes, and now I will hand it back to the chair of the session, and the chair will guide us towards any future discussion points. Thank you again for your attention.